I came home early from my business trip and froze at what I overheard through my bedroom door that night. My husband Michael was on the phone discussing how to, finally get rid of the dead weight and transfer ownership of the architectural firm I had built from the ground up. What he didn't know was that the woman he was planning to destroy had spent the last 6 months quietly preparing for exactly this moment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Standing in the marble-floored hallway of our Beacon Hill townhouse, surrounded by the architectural awards that bore Michael's name but represented my innovative designs, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The woman who had spent 5 years making herself smaller to accommodate her husband's need for recognition was about to discover that strategic patience could be far more powerful than confrontation. The late October evening had begun like countless others in our meticulously curated life. The townhouse reflected the sophisticated taste that architectural magazines praised in their features about, power couples reshaping Boston's residential landscape. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across surfaces that cost more than most people earned annually, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the historic neighborhood that had become synonymous with professional success and social influence. Elena Castellanos had learned to move through these spaces with the practiced grace of someone who understood that every detail contributed to the carefully constructed image that defined their public presence. The mahogany floors, imported from sustainable forests in Costa Rica, reflected her commitment to environmental responsibility that had become a signature element of their firm's reputation. The custom millwork showcased craftsmanship that distinguished their projects from competitors who prioritized cost efficiency over artistic excellence. Yet as Elena prepared for what should have been a routine return from the Sustainable Design Conference in Portland, something felt different about the familiar routine. The process of adjusting fresh orchids in the entryway, reviewing her reflection one final time before greeting Michael, selecting conversation topics that would demonstrate supportive interest in his daily activities without overshadowing his accomplishments. Each gesture felt increasingly like performance rather than authentic expression. The transformation had occurred so gradually that Elena had barely recognized the erosion of her professional identity until it was nearly complete. 5 years earlier, she had been Elena the innovator, the creative force whose understanding of sustainable architecture and client psychology had transformed theoretical concepts into award-winning reality. Her expertise in green building technologies, space optimization, and residential design had attracted clients who specifically sought her vision for integrating environmental consciousness with luxury living. The woman who now lived in this showcase townhouse was Elena the wife, accomplished enough to enhance Michael's sophisticated image, while remaining sufficiently modest to avoid overshadowing his supposed architectural brilliance. She had mastered the art of deflecting praise toward her husband's leadership, describing her innovative designs as collaborative input rather than foundational creativity, smiling graciously while he accepted recognition for sustainable building practices she had pioneered through years of research and experimentation. Elena's morning had begun with reviewing client proposals for the Cambridge project that would establish their firm as a leader in sustainable residential development. The innovative design integrated solar technology with traditional New England architecture, creating homes that achieved net zero energy consumption while maintaining the aesthetic character that preservation committees required in historic neighborhoods. Every aspect of the project reflected Elena's expertise in environmental systems, client consultation, and regulatory compliance that had taken years to develop through hands-on experience with municipal planning departments and environmental certification programs. Yet the presentation materials listed Michael as lead architect, with Elena's contributions characterized as valuable technical support that had helped execute his visionary concept. The pattern had become suffocating, yet Elena had convinced herself that this arrangement was temporary, that eventually Michael would acknowledge her contributions publicly and position her as an equal partner in their shared success. Harry. She had spent months telling herself that supporting his career advancement would ultimately benefit their partnership, that building his reputation within industry networks would create opportunities for both of them to gain recognition for their collaborative innovations. But watching Michael rehearse presentations about sustainable design principles he had learned from her research, observing his inability to answer technical questions about environmental systems he claimed to have developed, Elena had begun understanding that his intention was never to share credit, or acknowledge her foundational role in their firm's success. In Michael's carefully constructed narrative, Elena provided valuable technical expertise that helped him execute his architectural vision. She was the supportive wife whose engineering background facilitated his creative concepts rather than the architect, who had designed their reputation from conceptual foundation to client satisfaction. The distinction carried implications that extended far beyond professional recognition into fundamental questions about the authenticity of their partnership. The Sustainable Design Conference in Portland had provided unexpected clarity about Elena's reputation within architectural networks that operated independently of Michael's public relations efforts. During panel discussions about innovative green building technologies, industry professionals had referenced projects that Elena had designed while crediting insights to the brilliant architect behind Castellanos' environmental design. The conference conversations revealed that Elena's expertise was recognized throughout the sustainable architecture community, even while it remained invisible within her own marriage and professional partnership. Environmental engineers consulted her about building systems integration, municipal planners referenced her regulatory compliance strategies, and sustainable design advocates cited her projects as models for responsible residential development. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a prominent environmental architect from Seattle, had approached Elena during a networking break with specific questions about the Cambridge project's innovative solar integration. "Ms. Castellanos," she had said, "your approach to combining preservation requirements with environmental technology demonstrates sophisticated understanding of both technical systems and community engagement that most architects never develop." The conversation revealed that Elena's reputation extended beyond their local Boston market into national networks where her sustainable design methodologies were discussed as breakthrough innovations that could be adapted to various regional contexts and regulatory environments. Architecture schools were using her projects as case studies in courses about environmental design and community planning. Yet Elena had returned to Boston with the familiar understanding that this professional recognition would remain invisible within her marriage, where Michael would present the Portland Conference insights as validation of his environmental architecture leadership, while she provided supportive technical details that demonstrated her helpfulness rather than her fundamental expertise. The townhouse felt different as Elena entered through the front door that evening, though she initially attributed the sensation to travel fatigue and the emotional complexity of receiving professional recognition that had no outlet within her personal life. The familiar space seemed to emphasize the contrast between her public invisibility and her actual capabilities, between the supportive role she performed and the innovative thinking that had created their firm's reputation. Michael's voice carried through the house from their bedroom, animated in ways it rarely was during conversations about their projects or their future together. The tone suggested engagement with topics that commanded his complete attention, unlike the distracted responses he typically offered when Elena attempted to discuss client relationships, design innovations, or business development strategies that could expand their firm's market position. Elena moved through the downstairs spaces, noting details that had previously escaped her attention. The architectural photography that decorated their walls featured projects she had designed but where Michael appeared as the sole subject in professional portraits. The industry awards displayed in their study bore his name, while recognizing innovations that had originated with her research into sustainable building technologies and client experience design. The contrast struck her as she climbed the stairs toward their bedroom, carrying luggage that contained materials from the Portland Conference, where her expertise had been acknowledged by professionals who understood the difference between authentic innovation and borrowed credibility. The conversation she could hear through their bedroom door grew clearer as she approached, revealing terminology and concepts that Michael rarely used during their discussions about business strategy or professional development. Standing outside their bedroom door, Elena realized that she was about to discover something that would fundamentally alter her understanding of her marriage, her professional partnership, and the carefully constructed life they had built together in their Beacon Hill townhouse. The woman who had spent 5 years accommodating, adapting, and deferring was about to learn truths that would transform her from someone who made herself smaller into someone who understood the strategic value of authentic strength. The conversation beyond the door continued with increasing intensity, revealing planning and coordination that suggested systematic effort rather than spontaneous decision-making. Elena understood that whatever she was about to hear would provide clarity about dynamics she had been unconsciously avoiding, truths about her marriage and professional partnership that would require responses she had never needed to consider. The architectural awards surrounding her in the hallway represented recognition for innovations that bore Michael's name but reflected her creative vision and technical expertise. The townhouse itself showcased design principles she had developed through years of research and client collaboration, yet the spaces felt increasingly like a museum of borrowed achievements rather than a home that reflected authentic partnership. Elena felt something crystallizing in her consciousness as she prepared to discover what Michael believed he could plan and execute without her knowledge or consent. The woman who had built their architectural firm's reputation while allowing someone else to claim credit was about to learn whether her strategic self-diminishment had been protecting a partnership worth preserving or enabling exploitation that threatened everything she had actually created. The voice beyond the bedroom door belonged to the man she had trusted completely, the partner she had supported professionally and personally while building their shared success. But the content of the conversation would reveal whether that trust had been protecting authentic collaboration or facilitating systematic betrayal by someone who had never intended to honor the commitments that formed the foundation of their supposed partnership. Standing in that hallway, surrounded by evidence of professional achievements that bore his name but reflected her capabilities, Elena understood that she was about to discover truths that would require her to choose between continued accommodation and authentic protection of interests she had been systematically undervaluing while overestimating his contributions to their shared success. The woman who entered that hallway was someone who had mastered strategic invisibility, who had learned to make her professional light smaller to avoid diminishing someone else's public image. The woman who would emerge from learning what lay beyond that bedroom door would understand that authentic partnership required mutual recognition, and that protecting legitimate interests sometimes demanded abandoning relationships built on systematic deception rather than genuine collaboration. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The conversation beyond the bedroom door revealed planning so methodical and betrayal, so comprehensive, that Elena understood she had been living within an elaborate performance rather than an authentic marriage. Michael's voice carried the animated enthusiasm he typically reserved for potential investors, discussing strategies for transferring ownership of Castellanos Environmental Design while ensuring Elena would be left with minimal legal recourse. Elena pressed herself against the hallway wall, her architectural training instinctively analyzing the acoustic properties that made every word audible through the solid oak door she had personally selected during their townhouse renovation 3 years earlier. The irony struck her with painful clarity. She was learning about the destruction of her life's work through spaces she had designed to create warmth and intimacy for authentic partnership. "The timing has to be perfect," Michael was saying to whoever commanded his complete attention on the other end of the line. "Elena's so focused on the Cambridge project that she won't notice the paperwork transfers until it's too late. By the time she understands what's happening, I'll have legal ownership of everything she's built, and she'll be lucky to get a settlement that covers her student loans." The casual cruelty in his voice revealed depths of calculation that Elena had never suspected during 5 years of what she had believed was genuine partnership. Michael spoke about destroying her professional life with the same detached precision he brought to discussing material specifications or municipal permit applications. Her life's work had become nothing more than assets to be acquired through strategic manipulation. "You have to understand," Michael continued, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used during client presentations. "Elena's brilliant with the technical stuff, but she has no idea how to protect herself legally. She's been so focused on making me look good that she never bothered to secure her own interests. The woman actually thinks our partnership agreement protects her contributions." Elena felt something cold settle in her chest as she realized that Michael's assessment contained uncomfortable elements of accuracy. She had been so committed to supporting their shared success that she had failed to protect her individual interests, assuming that authentic partnership would naturally result in mutual recognition and shared benefits. Her trust had been weaponized against her professional security. The conversation revealed months of planning that had occurred while Elena worked late evenings developing the sustainable design innovations that had attracted their most prestigious clients. Michael had been consulting with legal professionals about asset transfer strategies, while she researched environmental certification programs that would distinguish their firm from competitors who prioritized profit margins over environmental responsibility. The Cambridge project alone is worth 8 figures once it's completed, Michael explained with obvious satisfaction. Elena's environmental technology integration makes those townhouses the most advanced, sustainable residential development on the East Coast. The waiting list already has 50 families, and we haven't even broken ground yet. Every word confirmed Elena's growing understanding that Michael had never viewed their relationship as partnership, but rather as strategic access to capabilities he couldn't develop independently. Her expertise in sustainable architecture, client psychology, and regulatory compliance had been systematically harvested, while she remained focused on what she believed was collaborative innovation. The beauty of it, Michael continued, is that Elena's reputation in the environmental architecture community actually makes the transfer more valuable. When clients think they're working with the architect who designed the Brookline Net Zero project and the Cambridge Sustainable Townhouses, they're willing to pay premium fees for what they believe is her personal attention. The Brookline project had been Elena's masterpiece of sustainable residential design, integrating solar technology with traditional New England architecture, while achieving LEED Platinum certification through innovations she had developed during 2 years of intensive research. The recognition had established their firm's reputation within environmental architecture networks, yet Michael was discussing her achievement as intellectual property he could claim and monetize. Elena realized that Michael had been systematically positioning himself to steal not only her current projects, but her professional reputation within the sustainable architecture community. Clients who sought Elena's expertise would believe they were receiving her personal attention while actually working with someone who possessed only superficial understanding of the environmental systems that distinguished their projects. The voice on the other end of the phone call remained inaudible, but Michael's responses revealed coordination with someone who understood legal procedures for business acquisition and asset transfer. This wasn't spontaneous betrayal driven by marital dissatisfaction. This was systematic planning that had been developing for months, while Elena remained focused on client satisfaction and project innovation. "She'll never see it coming," Michael said with obvious satisfaction. "Elena's so trusting that she signs whatever paperwork I put in front of her. The woman actually believes I'm protecting our shared interests when I handle the legal documentation. She has no idea that every signature has been gradually transferring ownership to entities she doesn't even know exist." The revelation struck Elena with physical force as she understood that her cooperative approach to business administration had been systematically exploited to steal her own company. Every document she had signed in the interests of streamlined operations had apparently contained provisions that gradually eroded her legal ownership of innovations she had created through years of research and development. Michael's laughter carried genuine amusement as he described Elena's professional naivete and trusting nature as character flaws that had made his theft possible. The Cambridge project contracts are already structured so that completion payments flow directly to accounts Elena can't access. By the time those townhouses are finished, she'll discover that her life's work legally belongs to someone else. Elena found herself analyzing Michael's strategic thinking with the same methodical approach she brought to complex architectural problems. His plan demonstrated sophisticated understanding of legal procedures and business acquisition, suggesting consultation with professionals who specialized in asset transfer and corporate restructuring. This wasn't amateur opportunism. This was expertly planned theft, executed by someone who had been studying her vulnerabilities for months. The conversation revealed that Michael had been building professional relationships with investors and development partners who believed they were working with him individually rather than their collaborative firm. Industry contacts that Elena had assumed were shared resources were actually being cultivated as Michael's personal network, positioning him to continue using her innovations while excluding her from the benefits of her own professional achievements. "The investors love the environmental angle," Michael explained. "Sustainable architecture is the future of residential development, and Elena's innovations give us competitive advantages that other firms can't match. Once I have complete control, we can scale her designs to developments across New England, while she's stuck trying to rebuild from nothing." Each word revealed another layer of systematic betrayal that extended beyond simple business theft into comprehensive destruction of Elena's professional future. Michael wasn't content with stealing her current projects. He was positioning himself to prevent her from competing independently by claiming ownership of the innovative methodologies that represented her unique value within the sustainable architecture market. Elena understood that Michael's plan would leave her professionally isolated, unable to use her own innovations while he built a regional empire based on her intellectual property and established client relationships. The strategic thinking demonstrated calculation that transformed personal betrayal into professional destruction, designed to ensure Elena could never challenge his theft through competitive success. The phone conversation continued with discussions about timeline coordination and legal documentation that would formalize the ownership transfers Michael had been engineering through months of systematic deception. Elena realized that her husband had been treating their marriage as extended reconnaissance mission, studying her professional methods and business relationships while planning their comprehensive appropriation. Elena's reputation makes this transition seamless, Michael concluded. Clients trust her expertise, but they'll work with whoever controls the firm's operations. Once the legal transfers are complete, her reputation becomes my competitive advantage, while she becomes irrelevant to the market she actually created. Standing in the hallway of the townhouse she had designed to reflect their shared values and collaborative vision, Elena felt the final pieces of her strategic assessment clicking into place. Michael had never been her partner in any meaningful sense. He had been conducting extended corporate espionage while she remained focused on authentic collaboration and shared success. The woman who had entered that hallway was someone who had trusted completely, who had made herself professionally vulnerable through commitment to partnership that she believed was mutual. The woman who now understood the scope of Michael's betrayal possessed information that would transform the strategic balance between them in ways he couldn't anticipate. Elena stepped back from the bedroom door with movements calculated to avoid creating sounds that might alert Michael to her presence. The architectural knowledge that had made her vulnerable to his theft would now enable her to move through their townhouse without detection, providing time to process the full implications of what she had discovered. The conversation beyond the door continued with detailed coordination about timeline implementation and legal procedures that would complete Michael's theft of her life's work. But Elena was no longer listening as a victim discovering betrayal. She was analyzing intelligence that would enable strategic response designed to protect interests Michael had systematically underestimated, while assuming her professional naivety would prevent effective resistance. The woman who had built their architectural firm's reputation while allowing someone else to claim credit was about to discover whether her expertise in complex problem-solving could be applied to protecting achievements someone believed he could steal without consequences. Elena's morning meeting with the Cambridge Planning Commission revealed professional recognition that existed entirely outside Michael's awareness, demonstrating how significantly he had underestimated both her reputation and her strategic capabilities within the sustainable architecture community. The municipal building's conference room, filled with preservation specialists, environmental engineers, and city planners, who had specifically requested Elena's participation in discussions about innovative approaches to historic district development. Commissioner Margaret Sullivan opened the session by acknowledging Elena's leadership in sustainable residential design, referencing projects that had transformed municipal approaches to environmental compliance while maintaining architectural integrity required by preservation guidelines. The recognition came from professionals who evaluated competence through measurable results rather than media coverage or industry networking events. Ms. Castellanos, Commissioner Sullivan began, reviewing documentation that chronicled Elena's innovative approaches to regulatory compliance. Your Cambridge Townhouse project represents breakthrough integration of environmental technology with historic preservation requirements. The Planning Commission has received inquiries from 3 other New England municipalities about adapting your methodologies for their own sustainable development initiatives. The session revealed that Elena's work had established new standards for environmental architecture that extended far beyond their local Boston market into regional networks of municipal planners and environmental policy specialists. Her systematic approach to balancing preservation requirements with sustainability goals had created replicable frameworks that other communities were implementing to address similar development challenges. Dr. James Patterson, the city's chief environmental officer, presented analysis showing how Elena's design innovations had influenced policy changes that would affect residential development throughout Greater Boston. The solar integration techniques developed for the Brookline project have become our standard recommendations for historic district applications. Ms. Castellanos created solutions that we now require for all comparable developments. Elena realized that her professional influence had been growing systematically through institutional channels that operated independently of the media attention and industry awards that Michael prioritized for their firm's public image. Municipal agencies, environmental organizations, and planning departments recognized her expertise through direct experience with projects that achieved measurable results rather than theoretical promises. The Planning Commission's documentation revealed that Elena's sustainable design methodologies were being studied by architecture schools and referenced in academic research about environmental building practices. Her innovations had generated intellectual property that was influencing industry standards across multiple markets, creating value that extended far beyond individual project fees or client satisfaction. Your work demonstrates that environmental responsibility enhances, rather than constrains, architectural creativity. Observed Dr. Sarah Chen, a visiting professor from MIT's Sustainable Architecture program. The integration of solar technology with traditional New England design elements has created aesthetic and functional standards that other architects are attempting to replicate. The academic recognition provided external validation of capabilities that Elena had been systematically minimizing within her marriage, while Michael claimed credit for environmental innovations he could not have conceived or implemented independently. Professional networks were acknowledging expertise that had remained invisible within their supposed partnership because Elena had prioritized collaborative success over individual recognition. Commissioner Sullivan presented Elena with formal documentation, requesting her consultation on statewide environmental building standards that would influence residential development policy throughout Massachusetts. The invitation represented recognition of her expertise by governmental agencies that evaluated credentials through demonstrated competence rather than public relations or networking relationships. The Department of Environmental Protection has specifically requested your input on solar integration requirements for historic properties, Commissioner Sullivan explained. Your Cambridge project provides the technical framework they need for developing regulations that balance preservation requirements with environmental mandates. Elena understood that this governmental recognition created professional opportunities that existed entirely outside Michael's influence or control. Her expertise was valued by institutional networks that operated through merit-based evaluation, rather than the charm and networking abilities that Michael had used to build their firm's public image while claiming credit for her innovations. The meeting concluded with multiple requests for Elena's consultation on projects throughout New England, each representing recognition of specialized knowledge that commanded premium compensation and positioned her as a thought leader within the sustainable architecture community. These opportunities belonged entirely to her professional reputation rather than their collaborative firm. During the drive back to her townhouse, Elena reflected on recognition that contradicted every assumption Michael had expressed during his phone conversation about her professional naivete and limited market value. Government agencies, academic institutions, and municipal planning departments were treating her as an expert whose innovations had influenced industry standards and policy development. The contrast between this institutional recognition and Michael's characterization of her as technically competent but strategically powerless revealed how completely he had misunderstood both her capabilities and her professional standing within networks that determined industry influence and compensation standards. Elena's afternoon meeting with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, senior partner at Northeastern Environmental Consulting, provided additional perspective on her reputation within professional circles that Michael had never bothered to understand or cultivate. Dr. Martinez had specifically sought Elena's collaboration on a regional sustainable development initiative that would influence environmental policy across 6 New England states. Ms. Castellanos. Dr. Martinez began reviewing Elena's project portfolio with obvious respect. Your systematic approach to environmental compliance has created methodologies that government agencies are requesting for statewide implementation. The technical innovations you developed for residential applications have broader implications for commercial and institutional development. The consultation revealed that Elena's work was being analyzed by environmental policy specialists who were developing regulations that would affect billions of dollars in regional development projects. Her innovations had created intellectual property that influenced governmental decision-making at levels far beyond individual architectural projects. The solar integration framework you developed for historic properties addresses regulatory challenges that have prevented environmental upgrades throughout New England, Dr. Martinez continued. State environmental agencies want to license your methodologies for use in municipal planning processes. Elena realized that her systematic documentation of environmental building techniques had created proprietary knowledge that possessed substantial commercial value through licensing agreements and consulting contracts that would operate independently of any architectural firm or partnership arrangement. Her expertise had generated intellectual property that belonged entirely to her professional development. Dr. Martinez presented licensing proposals that would provide Elena with ongoing compensation for governmental use of her environmental compliance methodologies. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is prepared to offer a substantial licensing fee for statewide implementation of your solar integration standards. The licensing opportunities represented passive income streams that would continue generating compensation regardless of Elena's employment status or business relationships. Her innovations had created intellectual property that could support her financially while she pursued whatever professional directions she chose, providing security that existed entirely outside Michael's control or influence. Your work has influenced academic curriculum development at 3 major universities, Dr. Martinez noted, referencing course materials that used Elena's projects as case studies for advanced environmental architecture programs. MIT, Harvard, and Northeastern are incorporating your methodologies into their sustainable design curricula. Elena understood that academic recognition had created consulting opportunities with educational institutions that valued her expertise for training the next generation of environmental architects. These relationships would provide ongoing professional engagement while establishing her thought leadership within academic networks that influenced industry standards and government policy. The meeting concluded with Dr. Martinez offering Elena a senior consulting position that would involve policy development, academic collaboration, and private sector consulting that could generate compensation exceeding her current firm's annual revenue. The opportunity existed entirely outside Michael's professional sphere and required expertise that he could not replicate or claim. Ms. Castellanos, Dr. Martinez concluded, your expertise positions you as one of the most influential environmental architects in New England. The question is whether you want to continue working within existing arrangements or develop your potential through opportunities that fully utilize your capabilities. Elena realized that professional recognition had been growing systematically through networks that evaluated competence rather than public image, creating opportunities that Michael had never suspected existed because he focused on media coverage and industry awards rather than institutional relationships and policy influence. The academic validation, governmental recognition, and licensing opportunities revealed that Elena possessed professional standing that transcended her current business partnership, while providing resources that could support whatever career direction she chose to pursue. Her expertise had created value that belonged entirely to her intellectual property, rather than collaborative arrangements that could be dissolved or stolen. Elena returned to her townhouse that evening, understanding that Michael's assessment of her professional vulnerability was based on fundamental misunderstanding of her actual capabilities and market position. The institutional recognition, licensing opportunities, and consulting relationships demonstrated expertise that commanded respect and compensation from organizations that operated through merit-based evaluation. The woman who had discovered Michael's betrayal through overheard phone conversations was learning that her professional foundation was far stronger than either of them had previously understood. Recognition from government agencies, academic institutions, and environmental organizations had created opportunities that existed entirely outside Michael's control, while providing resources that could support her transition to independent practice. Elena's systematic documentation of her innovations, her relationships with institutional clients, and her recognition within academic networks had created professional assets that Michael could not steal because he had never understood their existence or value. The expertise that he dismissed as technical competence was actually thought leadership that influenced policy development and industry standards throughout New England. The discovery transformed Elena's understanding of her strategic position, from professional vulnerability to substantial advantage that had been developing systematically through channels that Michael had ignored, while focusing on media attention and networking events that generated public image rather than institutional influence. Elena's systematic investigation of their shared office files revealed a comprehensive architecture of betrayal that extended far beyond the phone conversation she had overheard. The discovery began when she accessed their firm's digital project management system to review client communications about the Cambridge development, only to find folders labeled with project names she had never seen before, and client relationships that had been deliberately concealed from her awareness. The Metro West residential portfolio contained detailed proposals for sustainable housing developments across 3 Massachusetts communities, each project based on environmental design innovations Elena had developed during her late-night research sessions. The proposals presented these methodologies as proprietary technologies developed by Michael Castellanos individually, with no reference to Elena's foundational role in creating the sustainable building systems that distinguish these projects from conventional residential development. Every document bore Michael's digital signature and contact information, positioning him as the sole architect responsible for environmental innovations that had originated with Elena's expertise in solar integration, water management systems, and energy-efficient building design. The technical specifications demonstrated comprehensive understanding of her work, suggesting that Michael had been systematically documenting her innovations while planning their unauthorized commercial application. The Berkshire Mountain Retreat project revealed Michael's most audacious appropriation of Elena's intellectual property. The luxury sustainable cabin development incorporated every environmental technology she had pioneered during 5 years of research and experimentation, from passive solar heating systems to greywater recycling innovations that had taken months of engineering analysis to perfect. The project proposal valued these innovations at $12 million, while crediting their development entirely to Michael's architectural vision. Elena realized that Michael had been conducting industrial espionage within their own partnership, systematically capturing her research methodologies and client development strategies while building a parallel business operation that would benefit from her expertise while excluding her from compensation or recognition. His theft encompassed not only current projects but intellectual property that represented years of professional development. The client communication logs revealed relationships that Michael had been cultivating through networking events Elena had assumed were collaborative business development activities. Wealthy developers from Connecticut and Rhode Island had been discussing premium fees for access to what they believed was Michael's personal expertise in sustainable luxury residential design, unaware that the innovations they sought originated with research Elena had conducted independently. These clients were paying substantial deposits for architectural services they believed would provide access to cutting-edge environmental technologies that Michael had presented as his proprietary innovations. The financial arrangements involved fees that exceeded their current firm's annual revenue, yet Elena had no knowledge of these relationships or the substantial deposits that had been collected for projects based on her intellectual property. The invoicing system contained records of payments that had been diverted to business accounts Elena had never seen before. Michael had established financial structures that captured revenue from projects based on her innovations, while ensuring that profits never appeared in their shared business accounting. The systematic financial deception had been operating for more than 18 months, generating substantial hidden income, while Elena remained focused on their collaborative projects. Elena discovered that Michael had been licensing her sustainable design methodologies to other architectural firms throughout New England, collecting royalty payments for innovations he had never developed, while preventing her from understanding that her expertise possessed substantial commercial value through intellectual property licensing. The licensing agreements generated monthly income that exceeded Elena's salary from their supposed partnership. The contract analysis revealed that Michael had been consulting with legal professionals who specialized in intellectual property theft and business acquisition strategies. Attorney correspondence contained detailed discussions about methods for claiming ownership of innovations developed by business partners, including systematic documentation approaches that could support legal claims about invention and development processes. The legal consultation records showed that Michael had been building a comprehensive case for claiming sole ownership of Elena's sustainable architecture innovations by creating false documentation about development timelines and research processes. His attorneys had provided detailed guidance about evidence collection methods that could support claims about intellectual property ownership in potential litigation scenarios. Elena found correspondence with patent attorneys who were preparing applications for environmental building technologies that Elena had developed through years of independent research. The patent applications listed Michael as sole inventor while incorporating technical specifications that reflected her expertise in solar integration, energy efficiency, and sustainable materials selection that she had developed through extensive professional education and hands-on experimentation. The patent documentation represented systematic theft of Elena's intellectual property through legal channels that would prevent her from using her own innovations if the applications were approved. Michael was attempting to claim legal ownership of environmental technologies that represented Elena's core professional expertise and competitive advantage within the sustainable architecture market. The financial investigation revealed offshore banking arrangements that had been used to conceal income from projects based on Elena's innovations. Michael had established accounts in jurisdictions that provided privacy protection for assets acquired through questionable methods, suggesting sophisticated understanding of wealth concealment strategies that exceeded typical business financial management. Elena discovered that Michael had been working with wealth management professionals who specialized in asset protection for individuals facing potential legal challenges related to business acquisitions or intellectual property disputes. The financial planning documents revealed systematic preparation for scenarios where his ownership claims might be challenged through legal proceedings. The email correspondence contained discussions with forensic accounting specialists who had provided guidance about documentation destruction and evidence concealment methods that could protect Michael from liability in potential intellectual property theft investigations. The systematic evidence destruction planning revealed criminal intent rather than simple business opportunism. Elena realized that Michael's betrayal extended beyond marriage infidelity or business partnership dissolution into comprehensive identity theft that threatened her professional reputation and financial security. His systematic appropriation of her intellectual property had been planned and executed with criminal sophistication that suggested consultation with specialists in white-collar fraud and business asset theft. The investigation revealed that Michael had been photographing Elena's research documents, copying her client development strategies, and recording her technical explanations during casual conversations that she had assumed reflected genuine interest in collaborative innovation. Every aspect of their professional relationship had been weaponized for systematic theft of her intellectual property and business relationships. The scope of documentation suggested that Michael had been planning this comprehensive theft for more than 2 years, gradually building legal and financial structures that would enable him to claim ownership of Elena's innovations while leaving her with minimal recourse through legal or professional channels. The betrayal represented criminal enterprise rather than opportunistic relationship exploitation. Elena found evidence that Michael had been consulting with private investigators who had provided background research about Elena's professional relationships, financial resources, and potential legal vulnerabilities that could be exploited during business acquisition processes. The investigation included analysis of her personal communication patterns and social relationships that had been monitored without her knowledge or consent. The private investigation reports contained detailed assessments of Elena's character traits and decision-making patterns that had been analyzed to identify psychological vulnerabilities that could be manipulated during the theft process. Michael had been conducting psychological warfare based on professional analysis of her personality and behavioral patterns. Elena discovered that Michael had been recording their private conversations using digital surveillance equipment that had been concealed within their home office and bedroom. The recorded conversations contained thousands of hours of her technical explanations, client development strategies, and research methodologies that had been transcribed and organized for use in supporting his intellectual property ownership claims. The surveillance evidence revealed that Michael had been treating their marriage as an extended intelligence operation designed to capture Elena's professional expertise while building legal documentation that could support claims about innovation ownership. Every intimate conversation had been monitored and analyzed for information that could be used to steal her intellectual property. The comprehensive investigation revealed that Elena had been living with someone who was conducting systematic criminal enterprise designed to destroy her professional life, while enriching himself through theft of her intellectual property and business relationships. The betrayal encompassed every aspect of their personal and professional relationship, while demonstrating criminal sophistication that threatened her financial security and professional reputation. Elena realized that the woman who had trusted completely and focused on collaborative success had been protecting a criminal who was systematically stealing her life's work while planning her professional destruction. The discovery transformed her understanding from personal betrayal to recognition that she was dealing with sophisticated white-collar criminal activity that required strategic legal response rather than emotional processing. The evidence collection phase revealed that Elena possessed comprehensive documentation of Michael's criminal activity, while he remained unaware that his theft had been discovered. The woman who had been victimized through systematic deception now possessed information that could protect her interests, while ensuring appropriate consequences for comprehensive intellectual property theft and business fraud. Elena's unexpected encounter with Daniel Rodriguez, senior partner at Meridian Architecture, during a sustainable building materials conference at the Boston Convention Center, revealed professional support networks that had been quietly acknowledging her expertise for years. Daniel approached her during the morning break between presentations on advanced solar integration techniques, his expression reflecting genuine respect, rather than the networking courtesy that typically characterized industry conference interactions. "Ms. Castellanos," Daniel began, referencing a leather portfolio that contained documentation Elena had never seen before. "I hope you don't mind my approaching you directly, but Meridian Architecture has been following your work for the past 3 years. Your innovations in historic preservation combined with environmental technology have influenced our entire approach to sustainable residential design." The conversation revealed that Elena's reputation within the architectural community extended far beyond her awareness, generating recognition and opportunities that had developed independently of her partnership with Michael or their firm's public relations efforts. Meridian Architecture represented one of New England's most prestigious sustainable design firms, with projects that had established industry standards for environmental architecture throughout the Northeast. "Your Brookline Net Zero project fundamentally changed how we approach solar integration in traditional New England neighborhoods," Daniel continued, presenting technical documentation that analyzed Elena's design methodologies with remarkable detail. "We've incorporated your passive solar techniques into 12 residential projects over the past 18 months, always crediting your innovations as the foundation for our environmental compliance strategies." Elena realized that her work had been generating influence throughout the sustainable architecture community, through channels that operated entirely outside Michael's awareness or control. Professional firms were studying her projects, adapting her methodologies and crediting her innovations while she remained focused on collaborative partnership that had systematically minimized her individual professional recognition. Daniel's portfolio contained project documentation from architectural firms throughout New England that had requested consultation about implementing Elena's sustainable design approaches in their own residential developments. The requests came from firms that specialized in luxury sustainable housing, municipal planning departments seeking environmental compliance strategies, and academic institutions developing curriculum for advanced environmental architecture programs. "The technical specifications you developed for solar integration with historic facades have become our standard reference materials," Daniel explained, showing Elena documents that proved her innovations were being used as industry benchmarks. "When clients request sustainable retrofits for historic properties, we begin every consultation by reviewing your methodological framework." The recognition provided external validation of expertise that Elena had been systematically undervaluing while accommodating Michael's need to position himself as the visionary behind their firm's environmental innovations. Professional networks had been acknowledging her thought leadership through direct application of her methodologies rather than abstract theoretical appreciation. Elena discovered that her systematic documentation of sustainable building techniques had created intellectual property that was influencing architectural education and professional practice throughout the region. Universities were using her projects as case studies in graduate-level environmental design courses, while professional certification programs referenced her innovations as examples of best practices in sustainable residential architecture. MIT's Environmental Architecture program has developed an entire curriculum module based on your Cambridge townhouse project, Daniel revealed, presenting academic documentation that Elena had never seen before. Professor Jennifer Walsh specifically requested permission to use your technical drawings and environmental performance data as teaching materials for advanced graduate students. The academic recognition represented validation from educational institutions that evaluated innovations through rigorous analysis rather than public relations or industry networking. Elena's work was being studied by the next generation of environmental architects, establishing her influence within academic networks that would shape industry standards for decades. Daniel presented Elena with a formal collaboration proposal for Meridian Architecture that would position her as senior consulting architect for sustainable residential projects throughout New England. The role would provide substantial compensation while acknowledging her expertise through title and public recognition that reflected her actual contributions to environmental architecture innovation. We're prepared to offer you a senior partnership position that would involve leading our sustainable design division, Daniel explained, outlining compensation packages that exceeded Elena's current income while providing equity participation in projects that utilized her expertise. Your reputation and innovations would receive full recognition while you'd have resources to develop your methodologies at scale. The partnership offer represented professional opportunities that existed entirely outside Michael's influence or control, providing Elena with alternatives to her current situation that would acknowledge her capabilities while offering substantially improved compensation and professional recognition. Meridian Architecture was investing in expertise they had personally evaluated rather than accepting secondary claims about potential contributions. Elena's afternoon meeting with Patricia Hennessy, principal architect at Green Horizon Design, provided additional perspective on her professional reputation within networks that specialized in sustainable luxury residential development. Patricia had specifically sought Elena's consultation about environmental technologies that could be integrated into high-end residential projects without compromising aesthetic standards that affluent clients demanded. Ms. Castellanos, Patricia began, reviewing project portfolios that demonstrated Green Horizon's commitment to environmental innovation. Your work represents the perfect integration of environmental responsibility with luxury residential design. Our clients specifically request the sustainable technologies you pioneered because they enhance rather than compromise their living experience. The consultation revealed that Elena's innovations had created market demand among affluent clients who were willing to pay premium fees for environmental technologies that provided both sustainability benefits and luxury amenities. Her systematic approach to integrating solar power, energy efficiency, and water management systems had proven that environmental consciousness could enhance, rather than constrain, high-end residential design. The solar integration techniques you developed for the Beacon Hill townhouse renovation have become our signature approach for historic district projects. Patricia continued, presenting client testimonials that praised environmental technologies Elena had designed. Clients understand that your innovations provide both environmental benefits and increased property values that justify the premium investment. Elena realized that her technical expertise had created competitive advantages within luxury residential markets that commanded substantial fees while generating client satisfaction that created referral networks and repeat business opportunities. Her innovations had proven commercial viability that extended beyond environmental compliance into enhanced customer experience and property value appreciation. Patricia presented Elena with consulting contracts for 3 luxury residential projects in Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Bar Harbor that would provide substantial compensation while establishing her reputation within affluent markets that prioritized both environmental responsibility and luxury amenities. The projects represented opportunities to work with clients who specifically sought her expertise rather than accepting generic sustainable design services. These clients have specifically requested your consultation because they understand that your innovations provide environmental benefits without compromising the luxury experience they expect. Patricia explained, outlining project budgets that reflected premium compensation for specialized expertise. Your reputation for integrating sustainability with luxury design has created market demand that other architects cannot satisfy. Elena discovered that her systematic approach to sustainable luxury design had established her as a thought leader within market segments that provided both substantial compensation and professional recognition. Affluent clients were willing to pay premium fees for access to innovations they understood would enhance their properties while supporting their environmental values. The evening brought an unexpected phone call from Dr. Amanda Foster, director of the New England Sustainable Architecture Consortium, who had been tracking Elena's professional development through academic and industry networks that evaluated expertise through peer review rather than public relations efforts. Ms. Castellanos, Dr. Foster began, the consortium has been monitoring your contributions to sustainable residential design, and we'd like to invite you to serve as keynote speaker for our annual conference in Burlington. Your innovations represent breakthrough thinking that our membership needs to understand and adapt. The invitation represented recognition from the most prestigious sustainable architecture organization in New England, positioning Elena as a thought leader whose expertise commanded attention from professionals throughout the region. The keynote opportunity would provide platform for sharing her innovations, while establishing her reputation as an authority within environmental architecture networks. Your systematic approach to regulatory compliance combined with aesthetic excellence has created methodologies that address fundamental challenges in sustainable residential design. Drive. Foster continued. The consortium membership specifically requested your presentation because your work demonstrates solutions to problems that have prevented widespread adoption of environmental technologies. Elena understood that professional recognition had been developing systematically through merit-based evaluation by colleagues who understood the difference between authentic innovation and borrowed credibility. The consortium invitation represented validation from peers who recognized expertise through direct analysis of technical achievements, rather than accepting claims about collaborative contributions. The keynote invitation included opportunities for publication in the consortium's quarterly journal, consultation with member firms seeking to implement Elena's methodologies, and participation in policy development initiatives that would influence environmental building standards throughout New England. The recognition created platforms for expanding her influence while generating substantial consulting income. Elena realized that professional validation had been accumulating through channels that operated independently of her partnership with Michael, while creating opportunities that belonged entirely to her individual expertise and reputation. The recognition from Meridian Architecture, Green Horizon Design, and the New England Sustainable Architecture Consortium demonstrated that her capabilities were acknowledged and valued throughout the sustainable architecture community. The discovery transformed Elena's understanding of her professional position from vulnerability and dependence to substantial strength and independence that had been developing systematically through networks that evaluated competence, rather than accepting borrowed authority or collaborative claims about innovation ownership. Elena's meeting with Alexandra Morrison, managing partner at Morrison Capital Partners, transformed her understanding of the commercial value that her sustainable architecture innovations commanded within investment markets that specialized in environmental technology and green building development. The conference room overlooking Boston Harbor reflected the sophisticated financial environment where Elena's technical expertise was being evaluated as intellectual property worthy of substantial capital investment. Alexandra had built her reputation by identifying breakthrough environmental technologies before they achieved mainstream recognition, investing in innovations that would shape industry standards, while generating exceptional returns for investors who understood the commercial potential of sustainable development. Her portfolio included companies that had revolutionized solar energy, water management systems, and building efficiency technologies that were transforming residential and commercial construction throughout North America. Ms. Castellanos, Alexandra began, reviewing comprehensive documentation that analyzed Elena's innovations from investment perspective rather than architectural appreciation. Your systematic approach to sustainable residential design has created intellectual property that represents significant commercial opportunity within rapidly expanding green building markets. The investment analysis revealed that Elena's methodologies for integrating environmental technologies with luxury residential design addressed market demands that were generating substantial revenue growth throughout the sustainable construction. Affluent consumers were demonstrating willingness to pay premium prices for homes that provided environmental benefits without compromising aesthetic quality or comfort standards. The solar integration techniques you developed for historic properties solve regulatory and aesthetic challenges that have prevented widespread adoption of renewable energy systems in premium residential markets, Alexandra continued, presenting market research that quantified the commercial potential of Elena's innovations. Our analysis indicates that licensing your methodologies could generate annual revenue exceeding $50 million within 5 years. Elena realized that her technical expertise had created intellectual property that possessed substantial value within investment markets that understood the commercial potential of environmental innovations. Her systematic documentation of sustainable building techniques had produced methodologies that could be licensed, franchised, or scaled through business models that would generate ongoing revenue streams. The investment proposal outlined multiple strategies for commercializing Elena's innovations through consulting services, licensing agreements, educational programs, and technology partnerships that would establish her as a thought leader within environmental architecture, while generating compensation that reflected the commercial value of her intellectual property. Your reputation within academic and professional networks provides credibility that investors require when evaluating environmental technology investments, Alexandra explained, presenting testimonials from university researchers and industry professionals who had referenced Elena's work in peer-reviewed publications and professional certification programs. The documentation revealed that Elena's innovations were being studied by environmental engineering programs, referenced in graduate-level architecture courses, and implemented by municipal planning departments that were developing sustainable building standards for residential development projects. Her work had achieved academic validation that provided foundation for commercial investment. Alexandra presented Elena with partnership proposals from 3 investment firms that specialized in environmental technology commercialization. Each proposal offered substantial capital investment for developing Elena's methodologies into scalable business operations that would serve markets throughout New England and potentially expand into national sustainable residential development. Morrison Capital Partners is prepared to provide $15 million in initial investment for establishing Elena Castellanos Environmental Design as an independent firm specializing in sustainable luxury residential architecture, Alexandra outlined, presenting business plans that positioned Elena as chief executive officer of her own company. The investment opportunity represented complete professional independence from her current partnership, while providing resources that would enable Elena to develop her innovations at scale. The proposed business structure would acknowledge her intellectual property ownership while providing capital for expanding her methodologies into markets that demanded premium sustainable design services. Elena's afternoon consultation with Thomas Chen, senior attorney at Beacon Legal Group, provided perspective on protecting her intellectual property rights while ensuring that her innovations remained legally protected from unauthorized use by former business partners or competitors who might attempt to claim ownership of her technical developments. Ms. Castellanos, Thomas began, reviewing patent applications and intellectual property documentation that Elena had been developing through systematic research and innovation. Your sustainable architecture methodologies represent substantial intellectual property that requires comprehensive legal protection to ensure commercial viability. The legal analysis revealed that Elena's innovations qualified for multiple forms of intellectual property protection, including patents for environmental technology systems, trademarks for proprietary design methodologies, and copyright protection for educational materials and technical documentation that she had developed through years of independent research. The solar integration framework you developed for historic residential properties represents patentable technology that could prevent competitors from using your innovations without appropriate licensing agreements, Thomas explained, presenting legal strategies for protecting Elena's intellectual property while enabling commercial development through controlled licensing partnerships. The patent applications would establish Elena's legal ownership of environmental technologies that were being adopted throughout the sustainable architecture industry, ensuring that commercial use of her innovations would generate royalty payments that reflected their actual value within expanding green building markets. Thomas presented Elena with comprehensive intellectual property protection strategies that would secure her ownership of sustainable design methodologies while preventing unauthorized use by former partners or competitors who might attempt to claim collaborative development rights to innovations that Elena had created through independent research and experimentation. Your systematic documentation of research and development processes provides strong evidence for patent applications that could generate substantial licensing revenue while establishing legal precedent for intellectual property ownership in sustainable architecture, Thomas continued, outlining legal procedures for protecting Elena's innovations. The intellectual property protection plan included trademark registration for Elena's design methodologies, copyright protection for educational materials and technical specifications, and patent applications for environmental technology systems that distinguished her work from conventional sustainable architecture approaches. Elena discovered that legal protection of her intellectual property would create ongoing revenue streams through licensing agreements, while preventing unauthorized commercial use of innovations that represented years of professional development and technical expertise that could not be replicated without substantial research investment. The legal consultation concluded with Thomas offering to represent Elena in comprehensive intellectual property protection proceedings that would establish her ownership of sustainable architecture innovations while providing legal foundation for independent business development that would acknowledge her expertise through appropriate compensation and professional recognition. Elena's evening meeting with Dr. Jennifer Walsh from MIT's Environmental Architecture program revealed academic opportunities that would position her as thought leader within educational networks that influenced industry standards and professional development throughout the sustainable architecture community. Ms. Castellanos, Dr. Walsh began, presenting academic proposals that reflected MIT's commitment to practical environmental architecture education. Your innovations represent breakthrough thinking that our students need to understand and implement in their professional careers. The academic partnership opportunities included developing curriculum for graduate-level environmental architecture programs, conducting research that would advance sustainable building technologies, and publishing scholarly articles that would establish Elena's reputation within academic networks that influenced industry standards. MIT's Environmental Architecture program would like to offer you a visiting professor position that would involve teaching advanced sustainable design methodologies while conducting research that could lead to additional patent applications and commercial technology development, Dr. Walsh explained, outlining academic opportunities that provided both professional recognition and substantial compensation. The university appointment would provide Elena with platform for sharing her innovations while establishing credibility within academic networks that influenced professional certification programs and government policy development related to environmental building standards and renewable energy integration in residential construction. Dr. Walsh presented research opportunities that would enable Elena to develop next-generation sustainable architecture technologies while working with graduate students and faculty members who specialized in environmental engineering, renewable energy systems, and sustainable materials development that could enhance her existing innovations. Your systematic approach to integrating environmental technologies with aesthetic design principles addresses fundamental challenges in sustainable architecture that require continued research and development, Dr. Walsh continued, presenting research proposals that would advance Elena's work while generating academic publications and potential patent applications. The academic collaboration would provide Elena with access to research resources, graduate student assistance, and faculty expertise that could accelerate development of her sustainable architecture methodologies, while establishing her reputation as researcher and educator within university networks that influenced industry standards. Elena realized that academic recognition provided platform for advancing her innovations while generating compensation and professional acknowledgement that existed entirely outside her current business partnership. University appointment would establish her credentials as thought leader while providing resources for continued research and development. The combination of investment opportunities, legal protection strategies, and academic partnerships revealed that Elena possessed professional assets that commanded substantial compensation while providing multiple pathways for independent career development that would acknowledge her expertise and protect her intellectual property rights. Elena understood that professional recognition from investment firms, legal institutions, and academic organizations had created foundation for complete independence from her current partnership, while providing resources that would enable her to develop her capabilities at scale through business models that reflected the commercial value of her innovations and expertise. Elena's comprehensive consultation with the intellectual property law firm of Whitmore, Kessler & Associates revealed the sophisticated legal architecture required to protect her innovations, while ensuring that Michael's systematic theft would face appropriate consequences through both civil and criminal legal proceedings. The downtown Boston office reflected the firm's reputation for handling complex intellectual property disputes involving substantial financial assets and criminal fraud allegations. Partner Rebecca Whitmore had built her career prosecuting white-collar criminals who specialized in intellectual property theft and business fraud, developing expertise in cases where sophisticated professionals had stolen trade secrets, patent applications, and proprietary business methodologies through systematic deception and document falsification. Her experience provided Elena with strategic guidance about protecting legitimate interests while ensuring appropriate accountability for criminal behavior. Ms. Castellanos, Rebecca began reviewing the comprehensive evidence Elena had collected regarding Michael's systematic theft. Your documentation provides foundation for both civil intellectual property recovery and criminal fraud prosecution that could result in substantial financial penalties and potential imprisonment for the perpetrator. The legal analysis revealed that Michael's activities constituted multiple criminal violations, including intellectual property theft, business fraud, financial manipulation, and surveillance crimes that carried significant legal penalties under federal and state statutes designed to protect professionals from. Rebecca presented Elena with detailed legal strategies that would simultaneously protect her intellectual property rights while pursuing criminal prosecution for theft crimes that had generated substantial financial losses and threatened her professional reputation within the sustainable architecture community. The evidence you've collected demonstrates criminal intent and systematic planning that exceeds simple business partnership disputes, Rebecca explained, analyzing documentation that proved Michael's comprehensive fraud operation. Federal prosecutors have successfully pursued similar cases where business partners conducted systematic theft of intellectual property combined with financial fraud and surveillance crimes. The intellectual property protection procedures included immediate filing of patent applications that would establish Elena's legal ownership of sustainable architecture innovations, trademark registration for her proprietary design methodologies, and copyright protection for educational materials and technical documentation that Michael had been appropriating for unauthorized commercial use. Elena discovered that her systematic documentation of research and development processes provided strong legal foundation for intellectual property ownership claims that would prevent Michael from using her innovations while ensuring that she received appropriate compensation for unauthorized commercial application of her technical expertise. Rebecca outlined civil litigation strategies that would enable Elena to recover financial damages from Michael's unauthorized use of her intellectual property while securing injunctive relief that would prevent continued commercial exploitation of innovations that belonged entirely to her professional development and technical expertise. Your innovations qualify for substantial monetary damages based on commercial licensing fees that similar intellectual property commands within the sustainable architecture industry. Quote, Rebecca continued, presenting financial analysis that quantified the commercial value of Elena's stolen innovations. The damages assessment revealed that Michael's unauthorized use of Elena's intellectual property had generated revenue that exceeded $2 million through licensing agreements, consulting contracts, and project fees that should have provided compensation to Elena as the actual innovator and developer of the sustainable architecture methodologies. Elena learned that civil litigation could recover both actual damages from Michael's unauthorized commercial use of her innovations and punitive damages designed to discourage similar intellectual property theft by other professionals who might consider systematic exploitation of business partners or colleagues. The legal consultation included analysis of criminal fraud allegations that could result in federal prosecution for wire fraud, mail fraud, and racketeering charges related to Michael's systematic theft operation that had involved interstate commerce and federal banking systems through his concealment of stolen assets in offshore financial accounts. The surveillance evidence and document falsification activities constitute additional criminal violations that federal prosecutors have successfully prosecuted in similar intellectual property theft cases, Rebecca explained, reviewing evidence that demonstrated Michael's sophisticated criminal enterprise. Elena understood that criminal prosecution would provide public accountability for Michael's systematic fraud while establishing legal precedent that would protect other professionals from similar exploitation by business partners who might attempt intellectual property theft through deception and document manipulation. Rebecca presented Elena with protective legal measures that would immediately secure her intellectual property rights while preventing Michael from continuing his theft operation through destruction of evidence or transfer of stolen assets to jurisdictions that might complicate recovery proceedings. The protective measures included court orders that would freeze Michael's business accounts, prevent destruction of documents related to his theft operation, and secure physical evidence that supported both civil and criminal proceedings designed to recover Elena's stolen intellectual property and ensure appropriate legal consequences. We recommend immediate implementation of asset preservation procedures that will prevent the defendant from concealing or transferring stolen assets while legal proceedings establish your ownership rights and recover appropriate compensation, Rebecca outlined, presenting emergency legal motions that would protect Elena's interests. Elena discovered that legal procedures could provide immediate protection for her intellectual property while ensuring that Michael's theft operation could not continue during litigation proceedings that would establish her ownership rights and recover financial compensation for unauthorized commercial use of her innovations. The afternoon consultation with federal prosecutor David Morrison provided perspective on criminal charges that could address the comprehensive nature of Michael's fraud operation, while ensuring that criminal penalties would reflect the sophisticated planning and substantial financial impact of his systematic theft enterprise. Ms. Castellanos, Prosecutor Morrison began reviewing evidence that demonstrated federal criminal violations. Your case presents compelling evidence of organized criminal activity that violated multiple federal statutes designed to protect intellectual property and prevent business fraud through interstate commerce. The criminal analysis revealed that Michael's activities qualified for prosecution under federal racketeering statutes that address systematic criminal enterprises involving multiple violations including fraud, theft, surveillance crimes, and money laundering through offshore financial accounts that had Prosecutor Morrison explained that federal criminal prosecution would provide substantial deterrent effect for similar intellectual property theft, while ensuring that Elena's case established legal precedent that would protect other professionals from systematic exploitation by business partners who might consider criminal appropriation of collaborative work. The evidence demonstrates criminal intent and sophisticated planning that qualifies for enhanced sentencing under federal guidelines that address white-collar crime involving substantial financial losses and professional victim impact. Morrison continued, outlining prosecution strategies that would ensure appropriate accountability. Elena learned that federal criminal prosecution could result in substantial prison sentences and financial penalties that would provide appropriate consequences for Michael's systematic criminal enterprise, while ensuring restitution payments that would compensate Elena for financial losses and professional damage. The criminal charges would include conspiracy allegations that addressed Michael's coordination with legal and financial professionals who had assisted his theft operation through document preparation and asset concealment services that enabled systematic intellectual property appropriation. Federal prosecution will investigate all participants in the criminal enterprise, including attorneys, accountants, and financial advisors who assisted the intellectual property theft operation, Morrison explained, describing comprehensive investigation procedures that would address systematic criminal activity. Elena understood that professional recognition from investment firms, legal institutions, and academic organizations had created foundation for complete independence from her current partnership, while providing resources that would enable her to develop her capabilities at scale through business models that reflected the commercial value of her innovations and expertise. Elena's comprehensive consultation with the intellectual property law firm of Whitmore, Kessler & Associates revealed the sophisticated legal architecture required to protect her innovations while ensuring that Michael's systematic theft would face appropriate consequences through both civil and criminal legal proceedings. The downtown Boston office reflected the firm's reputation for handling complex intellectual property disputes involving substantial financial assets and criminal fraud allegations. Partner Rebecca Whitmore had built her career prosecuting white-collar criminals who specialized in intellectual property theft and business fraud, developing expertise in cases where sophisticated professionals had stolen trade secrets, patent applications, and proprietary business methodologies through systematic deception and document falsification. Her experience provided Elena with strategic guidance about protecting legitimate interests while ensuring appropriate accountability for criminal behavior. Ms. Castellanos, Rebecca began, reviewing the comprehensive evidence Elena had collected regarding Michael's systematic theft. Your documentation provides foundation for both civil intellectual property recovery and criminal fraud prosecution that could result in substantial financial penalties and potential imprisonment for the perpetrator. The legal analysis revealed that Michael's activities constituted multiple criminal violations, including intellectual property theft, business fraud, financial manipulation, and surveillance crimes that carried significant legal penalties under federal and state statutes designed to protect professionals. Rebecca presented Elena with detailed legal strategies that would simultaneously protect her intellectual property rights while pursuing criminal prosecution for theft crimes that had generated substantial financial losses and threatened her professional reputation within the sustainable architecture community. The evidence you've collected demonstrates criminal intent and systematic planning that exceeds simple business partnership disputes, Rebecca explained, analyzing documentation that proved Michael's comprehensive fraud operation. Federal prosecutors have successfully pursued similar cases where business partners conducted systematic theft of intellectual property combined with financial fraud and surveillance crimes. The intellectual property protection procedures included immediate filing of patent applications that would establish Elena's legal ownership of sustainable architecture innovations, trademark registration for her proprietary design methodologies, and copyright protection for educational materials and technical documentation that Michael had been appropriating for unauthorized commercial. Elena discovered that her systematic documentation of research and development processes provided strong legal foundation for intellectual property ownership claims that would prevent Michael from using her innovations while ensuring that she received appropriate compensation for unauthorized commercial application of her technical expertise. Rebecca outlined civil litigation strategies that would enable Elena to recover financial damages from Michael's unauthorized use of her intellectual property, while securing injunctive relief that would prevent continued commercial exploitation of innovations that belonged entirely to her professional development and technical expertise. Your innovations qualify for substantial monetary damages based on commercial licensing fees that similar intellectual property commands within the sustainable architecture industry, Rebecca continued, presenting financial analysis that quantified the commercial value of Elena's stolen innovations. The damages assessment revealed that Michael's unauthorized use of Elena's intellectual property had generated revenue that exceeded $2 million through licensing agreements, consulting contracts, and project fees that should have provided compensation to Elena as the actual innovator and developer of the sustainable architecture methodologies. Elena learned that civil litigation could recover both actual damages from Michael's unauthorized commercial use of her innovations and punitive damages, designed to discourage similar intellectual property theft by other professionals who might consider systematic exploitation of business partners or colleagues. The Solar Integration Framework represents breakthrough thinking about renewable energy applications in historic residential contexts. Michael explained to potential investors, using technical terminology Elena had taught him during conversations she had assumed reflected genuine professional collaboration. His confident presentation masked complete ignorance about the engineering principles that made the innovations possible. Elena maintained supportive expressions while photographing presentation materials with her phone, documenting Michael's systematic appropriation of her intellectual property for legal proceedings that would establish her ownership rights while recovering financial compensation for unauthorized commercial use of her innovations. The client meetings revealed additional evidence of Michael's deception, as he made commitments about project capabilities that exceeded his actual understanding of sustainable architecture principles. Elena observed his promises about environmental performance specifications that could only be achieved through technical expertise he had never developed, creating professional obligations that would ultimately depend on her continued involvement despite his plans for her elimination. We guarantee LEED Platinum certification through proprietary environmental technologies that our firm has pioneered, Michael assured clients, referencing innovations Elena had created while remaining unaware that his theft operation had been discovered and documented for legal action that would prevent continued unauthorized use of her intellectual property. Elena's afternoon work sessions involved systematic documentation of her intellectual property development processes, while maintaining normal project activities that prevented Michael from suspecting that his criminal enterprise had been detected. She organized research files that would support patent applications while continuing collaborative work that appeared consistent with their established partnership patterns. The technical documentation process required careful attention to timestamps and development sequences that would establish her ownership of sustainable architecture innovations through legal procedures designed to protect intellectual property from theft by business partners or collaborators, who might claim collaborative development rights to individually created technologies. Elena discovered that her systematic research methods had created comprehensive evidence of independent innovation that would support intellectual property protection, while preventing Michael from successfully claiming ownership of technologies he had learned through unauthorized access to her proprietary research and development activities. The patent application preparation involved working with intellectual property attorneys during lunch meetings that Michael assumed were client development activities, enabling Elena to protect her innovations while maintaining normal daily routines that prevented detection of her strategic legal preparations. Your documentation provides exceptional foundation for patent protection that will establish your ownership rights while preventing unauthorized commercial use of your innovations. Attorney Rebecca Whitmore confirmed during discreet consultations that Elena scheduled during Michael's networking events and industry conference activities. Elena's evening activities involved building relationships with sustainable architecture firms that had offered collaboration opportunities while maintaining normal social routines that prevented Michael from understanding that professional alternatives to their current partnership were being developed through legitimate business networking activities. The dinner meetings with Meridian Architecture and Green Horizon Design required careful scheduling coordination that avoided conflicts with social events where Michael expected her attendance, enabling Elena to pursue independent professional opportunities while maintaining appearance of continued commitment to their collaborative business relationship. Your reputation within the sustainable architecture community creates immediate opportunities for senior partnership positions that would acknowledge your expertise while providing substantial compensation improvement. Daniel Rodriguez confirmed during confidential discussions about Elena's professional transition options. Elena realized that professional networking activities provided cover for strategic preparation that would enable successful transition to independent practice while preventing Michael from understanding that his theft operation had been detected and would face comprehensive legal consequences through civil litigation and criminal prosecution. The bank account establishment process required coordination with financial institutions that could provide discrete services for protecting assets and income streams that belonged to Elena's individual professional activities, rather than their collaborative business partnership that Michael was systematically exploiting for personal enrichment. Elena opened accounts at institutions that specialized in professional services for individuals facing complex business transitions, ensuring that her intellectual property licensing income and consulting fees would be protected from Michael's access while providing financial foundation for independent business operations. The financial preparation included coordination with forensic accountants who were analyzing Michael's theft operation, while building evidence for civil litigation that would recover stolen assets and ensure appropriate compensation for unauthorized commercial use of Elena's sustainable architecture innovations. Your financial documentation provides strong foundation for damages recovery that will compensate you for intellectual property theft, while ensuring that licensing revenue from your innovations flows to appropriate accounts. Forensic accountant Maria Santos confirmed during discreet consultations. Elena's website development activities involved creating professional materials that would support independent business operations while maintaining normal collaborative project work that prevented Michael from understanding that marketing materials for autonomous practice were being prepared through discrete professional services coordination. The Elena Castellanos environmental design website showcased her innovations and expertise while providing platform for client development that would support immediate transition to independent practice once legal protections were implemented, and Michael's theft operation was terminated through appropriate judicial procedures. Elena discovered that professional marketing preparation enabled strategic positioning for independence while maintaining collaborative project activities that prevented premature exposure of her transition plans to someone who might implement countermeasures designed to complicate her legal position or business development activities. The academic relationship development involved coordination with MIT's Environmental Architecture program for teaching opportunities that would provide professional recognition, while generating consulting income that belonged entirely to Elena's individual expertise, rather than collaborative business partnership that Michael was exploiting. Your academic appointment will establish your credentials as thought leader while providing platform for sharing innovations that demonstrate your individual expertise and professional standing. Professor Jennifer Walsh confirmed during university consultations that Elena scheduled during Michael's business travel activities. Elena understood that academic recognition created professional foundation that existed independently of her current partnership, while providing compensation and intellectual property development opportunities that would support successful transition to autonomous practice through legitimate educational and research activities. The client relationship documentation involved systematic analysis of professional contacts that belonged to Elena's individual networking activities, rather than collaborative business development that Michael might claim ownership rights to during business dissolution proceedings that would establish individual versus partnership assets. Elena identified clients who had specifically sought her expertise for sustainable architecture projects, documenting relationship development processes that would support her claims to individual client connections that existed independently of collaborative marketing activities that Michael had conducted for their shared business operations. The systematic preparation process revealed that Elena possessed substantial professional assets including intellectual property, client relationships, academic connections, and industry recognition that belonged entirely to her individual expertise while providing foundation for successful independent practice that would acknowledge her capabilities through appropriate compensation and professional recognition. Elena realized that strategic patience during preparation phase was essential for protecting her interests, while ensuring that legal proceedings would proceed from position of strength, rather than reactive response to criminal activity that had been detected but not yet formally addressed through appropriate judicial channels and institutional procedures. The woman who maintained normal collaborative routines while building comprehensive foundation for professional independence demonstrated that systematic preparation enables strategic response to complex betrayal while protecting legitimate interests through appropriate legal and business channels that ensure successful transition to authentic partnership recognition and autonomous professional practice. Elena recognized the signs of escalating tension as Michael's behavior shifted toward increasing urgency regarding business transitions that he had previously discussed in abstract timeline terms. His phone conversations became more frequent and animated, suggesting that external pressures were accelerating his theft operation beyond the careful scheduling that had previously characterized his systematic appropriation of her intellectual property and business assets. The Cambridge townhouse project had reached the construction phase, where Michael's technical limitations created operational problems that threatened client satisfaction and project completion schedules. Elena observed his growing anxiety as contractors requested clarification about environmental technology specifications that exceeded his superficial understanding of sustainable architecture principles that he had claimed as personal expertise. The solar integration system requires modifications that weren't included in the original specifications, reported site supervisor James Thompson during a conference call where Michael struggled to respond to technical questions about photovoltaic array positioning and electrical grid integration that Elena had designed but never explained in sufficient detail for independent implementation. Michael's responses revealed fundamental ignorance about engineering principles that supported the environmental innovations he had been presenting as personal developments. His inability to address contractor questions about load calculations, electrical specifications, and structural modifications exposed the gap between his claimed expertise and actual technical knowledge that enabled successful project implementation. Elena watched Michael's increasing frustration as construction challenges required expertise that he had never developed independently. The sustainable architecture innovations that formed the foundation of their firm's reputation demanded technical knowledge that could not be acquired through superficial study or memorization of presentation materials that Elena had prepared for client meetings. The client communication demands revealed additional evidence of Michael's systematic deception, as property owners requested detailed explanations about environmental performance metrics and maintenance requirements for technologies they had purchased, based on his promises about long-term operational benefits and energy cost savings. We need comprehensive documentation about system optimization and troubleshooting procedures for the renewable energy components, requested client Rebecca Morrison, whose investment in sustainable technology had been based on Michael's assurances about technical support and performance guarantees that required expertise he had never possessed. Elena realized that Michael's theft operation had created professional obligations that exceeded his capabilities while generating client expectations that could only be satisfied through her continued involvement in projects where she had been systematically excluded from financial benefits and professional recognition. The legal documentation pressure intensified as intellectual property attorney Rebecca Whitmore confirmed that patent applications were proceeding ahead of schedule, creating timeline compression that would establish Elena's ownership rights before Michael could implement countermeasures designed to complicate her legal position, or claim collaborative development rights to individually created innovations. The Patent and Trademark Office has expedited review of your applications based on the criminal fraud allegations and evidence of systematic intellectual property theft. Rebecca reported during an emergency consultation that Elena scheduled during Michael's absence for what he claimed was client development activities. Elena understood that legal protection of her innovations was advancing faster than anticipated, creating strategic advantages while potentially triggering defensive responses from Michael if he discovered that his theft operation had been detected, and was being addressed through comprehensive civil and criminal legal proceedings. The financial account monitoring revealed suspicious activity as Michael attempted to accelerate asset transfers to offshore accounts and corporate entities that he had established for concealing stolen intellectual property revenue from legitimate owners and legal authorities, investigating systematic business fraud and money laundering activities. The defendant appears to be implementing accelerated asset concealment procedures that suggest awareness of potential legal exposure. Forensic accountant Maria Santos reported during discreet consultation about financial evidence that would support both civil litigation for damages recovery and criminal prosecution for systematic fraud and theft. Elena recognized that Michael's behavioral changes indicated growing awareness that his criminal enterprise faced potential exposure, creating urgency for implementing protective measures that would secure her intellectual property rights, while preventing destruction of evidence that supported legal proceedings designed to recover stolen assets and ensure appropriate accountability. The professional relationship monitoring revealed that Michael was attempting to formalize client contracts and licensing agreements that would transfer Elena's innovations to third parties, through legal arrangements that might complicate recovery proceedings if completed before protective court orders could prevent unauthorized asset disposition. Elena discovered that several architectural firms had received proposals for licensing Elena's sustainable design methodologies through agreements that positioned Michael as sole owner of intellectual property that belonged entirely to her research and development activities, conducted independently of their collaborative business partnership. The academic pressure increased as MIT's environmental architecture program requested immediate confirmation about Elena's teaching appointment and research collaboration that would establish her credentials as thought leader, while providing platform for sharing innovations that demonstrated her individual expertise rather than collaborative business partnership that Michael was systematically exploiting. The university requires formal appointment documentation by month's end to proceed with curriculum development and research funding applications that depend on your confirmed participation. Professor Jennifer Walsh explained during urgent consultation about academic opportunities that would provide professional recognition and compensation independent of Elena's current business arrangements. Elena understood that academic recognition created professional foundation that existed independently of her partnership with Michael, while providing compensation and intellectual property development opportunities that would support successful transition to autonomous practice through legitimate educational and research activities that acknowledged her individual expertise. The supplier relationship complications emerged as vendors requested clarification about payment procedures and contract modifications for materials and services required for projects where Michael had made commitments about environmental technology implementation without understanding procurement requirements or cost implications for sustainable building components. The specialized solar panel systems and energy storage components require advance payment and extended delivery schedules that weren't included in the original project budgets, explained supplier coordinator David Chen, whose company provided renewable energy equipment for residential installations that demanded technical expertise for proper specification and installation oversight. Elena realized that Michael's promises about project capabilities had created financial obligations that exceeded his understanding of sustainable architecture requirements, while generating vendor relationships that depended on technical knowledge he had never developed through independent study or professional experience. The client satisfaction pressure intensified as property owners began requesting modifications and performance improvements for environmental systems that required ongoing technical support and optimization services that Michael could not provide without Elena's continued involvement in projects where she had been systematically excluded from appropriate compensation and professional recognition. Elena observed Michael's increasing desperation as multiple operational challenges converged to reveal the extent of his dependence on expertise that he had been claiming as personal capabilities, while planning her elimination from business operations that could not function successfully without her technical knowledge and professional relationships. The market pressure escalated as competitors began questioning the technical credentials and project performance claims that had supported their firm's reputation within the sustainable architecture community, creating professional scrutiny that threatened to expose Michael's systematic appropriation of innovations he could not replicate or defend through independent technical analysis. Industry professionals are requesting detailed technical documentation about the environmental performance metrics and innovative methodologies that your firm claims as proprietary technologies. reported industry consultant Patricia Hennessy during a conference call where Michael struggled to respond to peer review questions about sustainable design principles and implementation procedures. Elena recognized that professional scrutiny was revealing gaps in Michael's technical knowledge that threatened to expose his systematic theft operation through industry networks that evaluated competence through peer review rather than accepting marketing claims about innovative capabilities and environmental expertise. The timeline convergence created strategic decision points as legal protections, professional opportunities, and operational pressures combined to establish conditions where continued accommodation of Michael's theft operation would compromise Elena's ability to protect her legitimate interests while pursuing career advancement through authentic recognition of her capabilities and professional achievements. Elena understood that the gathering storm of operational challenges, legal timelines, and professional opportunities had created circumstances where strategic action would become necessary to protect her intellectual property rights while ensuring successful transition to independent practice that would acknowledge her expertise through appropriate compensation and professional recognition that reflected her actual contributions to sustainable architecture, innovation, and industry advancement. The February morning that would transform Elena's careful preparation into decisive action began when she received an unexpected call from Cambridge project client Rebecca Morrison, whose voice carried unmistakable panic about construction problems that threatened the completion timeline for her sustainable luxury townhouse. The conversation revealed that Michael had made unauthorized modifications to Elena's environmental technology specifications, creating structural and electrical complications that jeopardized both project safety and environmental certification requirements. Ms. Castellanos, I need to speak with you immediately about serious problems with the solar integration system. Rebecca explained during the emergency consultation that Elena agreed to conduct despite Michael's explicit instructions that all client communications should be directed through his office. The contractors are saying that the electrical specifications don't match the structural modifications, and the building inspector has issued a stop work order until these discrepancies are resolved. Elena realized that Michael's technical incompetence had created project failures that threatened both client satisfaction and professional liability issues that could affect her reputation within the sustainable architecture community. His unauthorized modifications to her carefully engineered systems had created safety hazards while compromising the environmental performance metrics that justified the premium fees clients paid for sustainable luxury residential development. The site inspection revealed systematic implementation failures that demonstrated Michael's fundamental misunderstanding of the engineering principles that supported Elena's innovative environmental technologies. Solar panel positioning had been altered in ways that reduced energy efficiency while creating structural stress points that threatened building integrity. Electrical connections had been modified without regard for load calculations that Elena had specified based on comprehensive energy consumption analysis. The grounding system modifications violate both building codes and manufacturer warranties for the renewable energy components, explained electrical contractor David Park, whose expertise in sustainable building systems enabled him to identify technical errors that compromised both safety and performance standards. These changes appear to have been made without professional engineering review or permit modifications required for electrical system alterations. Elena understood that Michael's modifications had created legal liability issues while threatening the LEED certification that clients expected from sustainable architecture projects. His attempts to reduce construction costs through unauthorized specification changes had compromised the environmental performance that distinguished their firm's reputation within the premium sustainable residential market. The client meeting that afternoon revealed additional evidence of Michael's systematic deception, as Rebecca Morrison presented documentation showing that he had been invoicing for technical services and ongoing consultation that Elena had never authorized or been compensated for providing to clients who believed they were receiving her personal attention for sustainable technology optimization. Michael assured me that you would be available for monthly performance consultations and system optimization services that were included in our contract, Rebecca explained, presenting billing documents that revealed Michael had been charging premium fees for Elena's expertise, while she remained unaware that her professional services had been committed to clients without her knowledge or consent. Elena discovered that Michael had been systematically overcommitting her professional time and expertise to clients who expected ongoing technical support for environmental systems that required specialized knowledge to maintain optimal performance. His promises exceeded both her availability and their formal service agreements, while generating additional revenue that he had been concealing through the offshore financial arrangements that forensic accountants had identified. The Massachusetts Building Inspection Authority notification arrived by certified mail that afternoon, informing Elena that she was personally liable for professional engineering violations related to unauthorized modifications of permitted sustainable building systems. The official documentation revealed that Michael had submitted permit modification requests using Elena's professional license and digital signature without her authorization or knowledge. The permit modifications request structural and electrical changes that exceed the original design specifications while eliminating safety features that were required for building code compliance, explained Building Inspector Margaret Sullivan during the emergency consultation that Elena requested to understand her legal exposure from Michael's unauthorized permit applications. Elena realized that Michael had been using her professional credentials to authorize changes that created both legal liability and professional licensing violations that threatened her ability to practice architecture in Massachusetts. His unauthorized use of her professional license constituted criminal fraud while creating regulatory complications that could affect her career advancement and professional reputation. The intellectual property attorney emergency consultation revealed that Michael had accelerated his theft operation by filing patent applications that claimed ownership of Elena's sustainable architecture innovations, while listing himself as sole inventor of technologies that Elena had developed through years of independent research and experimentation. The defendant has filed provisional patent applications for 17 different sustainable building technologies that match the innovations you documented in your research files. Attorney Rebecca Whitmore reported during the emergency meeting that Elena requested after discovering the unauthorized patent filings. These applications could establish legal presumption of ownership that would require extensive litigation to challenge if they proceed to full patent approval. Elena understood that Michael's patent applications represented escalation of his theft operation that threatened to permanently transfer ownership of her intellectual property to someone who had never contributed to their development, while systematically excluding her from commercial benefits of innovations that represented her core professional expertise and competitive advantage. The emergency protective order filing became necessary to prevent Michael from continuing his systematic appropriation of Elena's professional credentials and intellectual property, while criminal fraud charges were being prepared by federal prosecutors who had agreed to expedite the case based on evidence of sophisticated white-collar crime involving substantial financial losses. Elena coordinated with legal counsel to implement immediate court orders that would freeze Michael's business accounts, prevent additional unauthorized patent filings, and secure physical evidence that supported both civil litigation for intellectual property recovery and criminal prosecution for systematic fraud and professional license violations. The confrontation became inevitable when Michael returned from what he claimed was client development activities to find Elena's attorney and federal investigators executing court orders that secured documentary evidence, while preventing destruction of files that supported criminal fraud charges, and civil litigation for intellectual property theft and financial damages recovery. What is the meaning of this intrusion? Michael demanded when he discovered law enforcement personnel and legal representatives in their shared office space, his voice carrying indignation that quickly transformed to concern as he observed the systematic evidence collection that was documenting his criminal enterprise for prosecution and civil litigation proceedings. Elena faced Michael directly for the first time since discovering his systematic betrayal, her voice steady with the confidence that comes from comprehensive legal preparation and documented evidence of criminal activity that would ensure appropriate accountability through judicial proceedings designed to protect victims of sophisticated white-collar crime. Michael, you are being investigated for intellectual property theft, business fraud, unauthorized use of professional credentials, and money laundering related to your systematic appropriation of innovations and assets that belong to my individual professional development. Elena explained with calm precision that contrasted sharply with his obvious panic about legal consequences he had never anticipated. The federal search warrant execution revealed additional evidence of Michael's criminal enterprise, including encrypted files that contained client lists, financial records, and correspondence with co-conspirators who had assisted his theft operation through legal document preparation and asset concealment services that enabled systematic fraud and intellectual property appropriation. Mr. Castellanos, you are under investigation for federal crimes including wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy related to systematic theft of intellectual property and business assets, explained FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen, whose expertise in white-collar crime prosecution provided authority for comprehensive evidence collection that would support both criminal charges and civil litigation proceedings. Elena observed Michael's transformation from confident manipulator to desperate criminal, facing serious federal charges that could result in substantial prison sentences and financial penalties designed to provide restitution to victims, while deterring similar white-collar crime involving intellectual property theft and professional fraud. The evidence collection process revealed the comprehensive scope of Michael's criminal enterprise, while demonstrating that Elena's systematic documentation had provided law enforcement with foundation for successful prosecution of sophisticated white-collar crime that had generated substantial financial losses while threatening professional reputation and career advancement opportunities. Elena realized that the catalyst event she had been preparing for had arrived through Michael's own escalation of criminal activity that created legal exposure, requiring immediate protective response through judicial proceedings that would secure her intellectual property rights while ensuring appropriate accountability for systematic theft and professional fraud. The woman who had discovered betrayal through overheard phone conversations had transformed into someone who could respond to criminal activity with strategic legal action that protected legitimate interests while ensuring that sophisticated white-collar crime would face appropriate consequences through comprehensive prosecution and civil litigation designed to recover stolen assets and prevent continued victimization. Elena's coordination of legal, financial, and professional protective measures demonstrated the power of systematic preparation as court orders, asset freezes, and intellectual property protections activated simultaneously to secure her interests while preventing Michael from continuing his criminal enterprise or concealing additional evidence of systematic fraud and theft. The federal court order that froze Michael's business accounts took effect at precisely 9 o'clock Monday morning, preventing access to funds that had been generated through unauthorized commercial use of Elena's sustainable architecture innovations. The asset preservation measures secured offshore accounts that Michael had established for concealing stolen intellectual property revenue while building evidence for criminal prosecution and civil litigation proceedings. The comprehensive asset freeze has secured approximately $4.7 million in accounts that contain revenue from unauthorized licensing of your intellectual property. Forensic accountant Maria Santos reported during the coordination meeting where Elena reviewed the scope of financial recovery that was proceeding through federal judicial procedures designed to protect victims of sophisticated white-collar crime. Elena realized that systematic documentation of Michael's theft operation had enabled law enforcement and civil attorneys to implement protective measures that exceeded her initial expectations regarding both the scope of stolen assets and the effectiveness of legal procedures for recovering intellectual property that had been appropriated through criminal enterprise and systematic business fraud. The intellectual property protection orders that established Elena's ownership of sustainable architecture innovations took effect simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions, preventing Michael from completing patent applications that would have transferred legal ownership of her technical developments to entities he controlled through fraudulent documentation and false invention claims. The Patent and Trademark Office has suspended processing of all applications filed under Michael Castellanos' name pending completion of criminal investigation and civil litigation that will establish rightful ownership of the disputed intellectual property. Attorney Rebecca Whitmore confirmed during the legal coordination session where Elena received updates about comprehensive protection measures. Elena understood that legal procedures had successfully prevented Michael from completing theft of her intellectual property, while establishing judicial recognition of her ownership rights through documentation that would support both civil litigation for damages recovery and criminal prosecution for systematic fraud involving substantial financial losses and professional credential violations. The Massachusetts Board of Registration for Professional Engineers initiated immediate investigation of Michael's unauthorized use of Elena's professional license for permit applications and project modifications that violated both regulatory standards and criminal statutes regarding professional credential fraud, and building code violations that created public safety hazards. The regulatory investigation has resulted in emergency suspension of project approvals that were obtained through fraudulent license use, while criminal referral has been submitted to state attorneys general for prosecution of professional credential fraud, explained board investigator Thomas Richardson during the regulatory compliance meeting that Elena attended to address licensing violations. Elena discovered the professional regulatory authorities were implementing comprehensive accountability measures that would prevent Michael from continuing to exploit professional credentials while ensuring that licensing violations would face appropriate legal consequences through both administrative proceedings and criminal prosecution for credential fraud and unauthorized professional practice. The client notification process revealed the extent of damage that Michael's technical incompetence and fraudulent practices had created for property owners who had invested substantial resources in sustainable architecture projects based on his false claims about technical expertise and ongoing professional support that exceeded his actual capabilities. Elena coordinated with legal counsel to provide comprehensive technical assistance to affected clients, while documenting additional evidence of Michael's systematic deception and the financial impact of his fraudulent business practices on third parties who had relied on his false representations about environmental technology capabilities and professional qualifications. The Cambridge project clients have suffered substantial financial losses from construction delays and system failures that resulted from unauthorized modifications to your original specifications, reported construction law attorney David Morrison during client impact assessment meetings that documented additional grounds for both civil litigation and criminal prosecution. Elena realized that client damage documentation provided additional evidence of criminal fraud while establishing her professional competence and technical expertise. In contrast to Michael's systematic deception and incompetence that had created both financial losses and safety hazards for unsuspecting property owners. The academic partnership activation with MIT's Environmental Architecture program provided Elena with immediate professional platform that demonstrated her individual expertise while generating compensation and intellectual property development opportunities that existed independently of her former business partnership with Michael. The university appointment establishes your credentials as thought leader in sustainable architecture while providing research funding and publication opportunities that will advance your innovations and professional recognition. Professor Jennifer Walsh confirmed during the academic coordination meeting, where Elena formalized her teaching and research responsibilities. Elena understood that academic recognition created professional foundation that supported her transition to independent practice, while providing intellectual property development opportunities that would generate ongoing compensation through research grants, publication royalties, and consulting contracts with institutions that valued her expertise. The architectural firm partnership negotiations with Meridian Architecture proceeded rapidly, as Elena's legal situation demonstrated both her individual capabilities and the comprehensive nature of protective measures that had secured her intellectual property rights, while preventing interference from criminal defendants facing federal prosecution. Meridian Architecture is prepared to offer senior partnership position with equity participation and intellectual property sharing arrangements that acknowledge your innovations and expertise through appropriate compensation and professional recognition. Partner Daniel Rodriguez confirmed during partnership negotiations that reflected Elena's enhanced bargaining position. Elena discovered that professional opportunities had expanded significantly, as her legal situation demonstrated both technical competence and strategic capability that commanded respect from sophisticated professionals who understood the complexity of intellectual property protection and criminal fraud prosecution in specialized professional contexts. The consulting contract establishment with Green Horizon Design provided Elena with immediate income streams that utilized her sustainable architecture expertise while building client relationships that belonged entirely to her professional reputation, rather than collaborative business partnerships that could be compromised through partner misconduct or criminal activity. The consulting arrangements provide substantial compensation for your technical expertise, while establishing client relationships that demonstrate your individual capabilities and professional standing within the sustainable architecture community. Principal architect Patricia Hennessy confirmed during contract negotiations that reflected market demand for Elena's specialized knowledge. Elena realized that consulting opportunities demonstrated market recognition of her expertise, while providing financial security that existed independently of legal proceedings and criminal prosecution outcomes that remained pending against Michael for systematic fraud and intellectual property theft. The New England Sustainable Architecture Consortium keynote presentation provided Elena with platform to demonstrate thought leadership while establishing professional credibility that supported both her legal position regarding intellectual property ownership and her market position as recognized expert in environmental architecture innovation. The consortium presentation will establish your professional reputation while providing networking opportunities with industry leaders who influence both business development and policy formation related to sustainable building standards, explained Consortium Director Dr. Amanda Foster during presentation coordination meetings. Elena understood that professional speaking opportunities created industry recognition that supported her intellectual property claims, while building relationships that would generate ongoing business development and professional advancement opportunities that reflected authentic recognition of her capabilities and innovations. The forensic accounting analysis revealed that Michael's systematic theft had generated revenue exceeding $6 million through unauthorized commercial exploitation of Elena's intellectual property, creating damages calculations that supported substantial financial recovery through civil litigation, while providing evidence for criminal restitution proceedings. The comprehensive financial analysis demonstrates systematic commercial exploitation of your innovations combined with sophisticated asset concealment that constitutes additional criminal violations under federal money laundering statutes. Forensic accountant Maria Santos reported during damages assessment coordination meetings that supported both civil and criminal proceedings. Elena realized that financial evidence provided foundation for comprehensive recovery of stolen assets, while demonstrating the sophisticated nature of Michael's criminal enterprise that justified enhanced criminal penalties and civil damages designed to provide both compensation and deterrent effect for similar white-collar crime involving intellectual property theft. The coordination of legal, professional, and business protective measures demonstrated that Elena's systematic preparation had created comprehensive strategic response capability that secured her interests while ensuring appropriate accountability for criminal activity through judicial proceedings that protected both individual victims and professional communities from sophisticated fraud and theft operations. Elena understood that strategic response to complex criminal betrayal required coordination across multiple institutional systems, including law enforcement, professional regulatory authorities, academic institutions, and business networks that could provide both immediate protection and long-term professional advancement opportunities that reflected authentic recognition of capabilities and achievements. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.